Have a nice partnership to have. Another reason that we love Sierra College. So we're at the point in the day where we want to have a conversation next with our K through 12 education leadership. And to kick that off, we have Cherry Spriggs, who is the director of the Placer Business Alliance. And what's interesting about this conversation is that we had this conversation back in Washington, D.C. And so part of today is checking back in with those leaders and seeing what has happened and how they're processing what they've heard today and also what we can expect next. So please join me in welcoming Cherry Spriggs and her panel. So Cherry.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, walk-up music. Okay, so it's after lunch, so this is now called the Wolverine Lounge. It's not the den anymore because they're after lunch, but no, Bill is right. So I serve as the executive director of the Placer Business Alliance, and the Placer Business Alliance is an organization that advocates on behalf of our 8 economic sectors here in the county, and we're aligned with those sectors, by the way, in which the county aligns themselves. And so much of our work is spent really serving as a storyteller around the thread that connects all 8 of those economic sectors. So that's water, housing, transportation, power, energy, and obviously education. So 2 years ago, well, more than 2 years ago, it was at our trip November 2022 where I hosted a panel called You Can't Spell Placer Without Spelling Place. And Willie was on that panel, and he said something that I thought was so remarkable, and that was the fact that Sierra College had a program with all of our high schools for exactly what we're talking about today, for the dual enrollment to help kids get, that transition, that seamless transition. I thought, wow, that's really incredible. So thinking about this over the last 2.5 years, and I am a storyteller. I'm a journalism background and a Spanish background, and so when we hear placer, we're here in Placer County, right? And so the definition of placer is a deposit of sand or gravel in the bed of a river or lake containing particles of valuable minerals, placer gold deposits, right? We've talked about the standards. We've talked about the standards that we set for ourselves here in our communities. That's a gold standard, right? So if you take that, thinking about the idea of what makes Placer a place people want to be now and in the next 20 years, and then I, put my Spanish hat on, right, because I have a background in Spanish too, and it's placer, well, that means pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet you. It's my pleasure to have you here. It's our pleasure to have you here. So if you think about this idea of quality of life and pleasure and the gold standards and how we're doing that and what we're doing and telling this story and all collaborating on all these pieces, it really got to a place for me in working with, I see Michelle here from Placer County Office of Education and Superintendent Garbalino Mojica. We needed to focus on this K-12 piece that Willie had started this idea back in DC in November 22. So that brings us to October 23, where we had a panel there. It was called Dual Enrollment and Career Tech Pathways, a win-win for students, schools, and the economy. And so Bill is right in that we started the first part of this conversation back in DC. And for Placer Business Alliance, and for me in particular, I just really hate going to an event and we talk about all these things and then you don't ever hear like, what happened, or what was the outcome, or what are we doing? And now we're talking about another thing. So this is actually really meant to be a check-in on, what it was that we discussed in October of 23 and where we're going. So I'd like to introduce my panel. So we have superintendents, Carrie Callahan from Wester Placer Unified. We have Jeff Tooker from Placer Union High School District. We have Roger Stock from Rocklin Unified School District, John Becker from Roseville Joint Union High School District, and Amy Schultz joins us again from Sierra College. So I just want to set the stage really quick on some stats that we talked about in DC. Okay, so K-12 dual enrollment across the schools here from PCOE, 2,027 enrollments with 34 courses offered. When you look through K through 12 CTE pathways, we have 12,285 enrollments with 77 CTE pathways offered across the board. So then going one step further, some other stats I want to make sure that you guys know. High school students who took CTE courses were employed full-time at higher rates 8 years after graduation compared to peers who did not take CTE courses. The median annual earnings for students who took CTE courses were higher than those who did not. So I think that really sets the stage. There's a lot of funding also that comes from the state to be able to fund these types of CTE courses and programs, so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But really, I think it's just best to start to have you guys just jump in with, where you are since we were in October, and I'm going to go with John, because in DC, John talked about the fact that the Department of Finance was going to be visiting his high school district because of its automotive program and the alignment with Sierra College. So let's go with you, and then all of you guys just jump in, and we'll get this done. Okay.
All right, well, thank you. Yeah, so in October, we were notified by the Department of Finance through the California Community College Chancellor's Office. They wanted to come do a visit, first because we had received probably the most money, us in our partnership with Sierra College, through the K-12 Strong Workforce Project, and so they wanted to come see what we were doing. And so I believe it was March 1st, we finally got everyone there, but it was from the Department of Finance, California Community College Chancellor's Office, State Department of Ed, some folks from other state governing offices to come see the automotive program as well as some of the programs here at Sierra College, because it really is, in terms of what we've heard today, a collaborative partnership that we look at from the high school sides seamlessly transitioning over into Sierra College. So they came out and visited, got a chance to show it, our automotive program, which is over at Adelante High School, which even better to that, and you heard Barry talk a little bit about it, it's at our continuation campus. So we have that great program on our continuation campus so that it exposes all types of students and gives all types of students access to that. So that was the visit that came through, and again, they were able to visit our program and then finish over here at Sierra College.
Carrie, sorry, I'm going to go to you. So I have to disclose that I am a parent in Carrie's district. I have a 13-year-old son, and he has dyslexia. And so I love being in Carrie's district and the CTE programs that are offered there, and especially the diversity between the programs between the two high schools. I do think we're going to actually have him go to Lincoln High School because I think those are more his jam, but take it away.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that Western Placer has to offer is a fully functional farm that is the largest west of the Mississippi and possibly in the United States. It's over 500 acres, and our students have a state-of-the-art welding shop that's on the farm, as well as opportunities to work with our food service department to do farm to fork in our cafeterias. In terms of our two high schools, because we recently added 12 Bridges High School in Western Placer, and by the way, we will be the largest school district in Placer County at some point, far exceeding Roseville Joint and Rocklin. We're set to have about 18,000 students when we are fully built out, and right now we're sitting at 8,000 students, so we have a lot of room to grow. At our two high schools, we kind of battle with a sense that Lincoln High School is our blue-collar school and 12 Bridges High School is the white-collar school, and that is not at all the case. But ultimately, with facilities and what we had available at Lincoln High School in terms of wood shop and construction, the farm, we have a manufacturing and production pathway, and that also has an engineering component that leads to 4-year art, media, entertainment at both of our schools. But there are opportunities for direct to work at both of our high schools, and there's also opportunity for the 4-year or technical school out of high school, regardless of which school that you go to. But in terms of some of that hands-on opportunities, that certainly is more available at Lincoln High School. We just got some of our data back for this year. Last year in 2023, we had about 65% of our high school students participating in career tech ed pathway courses, and this year we had 75% of our students. So pretty much all of our students are participating. It's more relevant and meaningful for them. They seek it out. Unfortunately, it's still not the norm of education for us, and I think with AI and even just internet coming on docket at one point, we have not caught up to that. We are still a lot of times teaching kids in the classroom the answers to questions that they could quite frankly ask AI or ask Google, and they want more than just the Common Core standards, right? Like they want the soft skills. They know and understand that it's not whether or not they know the Pythagorean theorem when they graduate from high school that's going to be meaningful for them. It's whether or not they can use that and apply it in the right situation in their line of work. And so as a district, we've really committed to identifying what are those most critical soft skills and traits that we want our young people to have. So we engaged in a portrait of a learner development, and so we have 6 characteristics that we've identified in our district that we are going to start embedding in everything that we do K-12, so that when you're in kindergarten and the 6 traits are taught in your kindergarten class, that's relevant to what it means for you as a kindergartner. One of our traits is kindness. We have curiosity, resilience, integrity, critical thinking, and collaboration, because we believe that at the end of the day, those 6 traits as a community are going to be more important than whether or not students have that content standard, and how that's going to lend itself to the CTE pathways as they go through the district is going to be big.
Well, and I think Portrait of a Learner, too, I mean, that's certainly reflective of how we are as a family and values that are important to us. I can't let this one go, though, because I know Carrie very well, and she was a former math teacher, so this girl loves a Pythagorean theorem, like example, like she's always coming out with that, so I think that's funny. One thing that she did say that I think is important, because we were talking about this before, is, you said 75% of the students were enrolled in CTE classes, and it was something that Lance Hastings said earlier. It's not a this or that, right? It's not like I'm taking CTE courses because I don't want to go to a traditional university, or or vice versa. It's right. It's all the things. It's kids are taking both, and I think that that's really interesting.
Yeah. So to jump in on that we're looking for that synergy, because students often, they may be in a career technical course, but it's also a dual enrollment course. And that course, for example, at Whitney High School, we have our Building Industry Trades program that starts students with basic construction skills, how to put in flooring, the subflooring, how to do the framing. It can go all the way up into construction management. But those students can also, they're dual enrolled here at Sierra College. They're getting one of the 3 courses for our construction certification here while they're at Whitney. So they already have that piece where they're not having to choose, is it or, but it's that and allows them to explore those opportunities, because we want students, and that's the benefit of being, for us in a K-12 district, TK-12, is students we know, we want them to begin to play, to find that passion, to have a purpose, because we want students they're motivated, they become self-motivated when they're doing something they're interested in. So for us, creating those opportunities, but also saying to students, you don't know your path, we don't know your path. Most people have multiple career changes, job changes in their lifetime. So we want to develop those skills. We want to develop that opportunity for students. That's why, we have most of our students in a CTE pathway in some level, or in a dual enrollment piece. And we also think about how do we provide those workforce skills, because, for example, if you're thinking about, say, healthcare industry, that's, a lot of student debt potentially. So how do we give you skills maybe to do some phlebotomy work at a local healthcare place? You're in the field, you're having a way to earn a living while you're doing that, and you're integrating in as you're moving forward. So we also try to think about that synergy of how we help students in that entry all the way through, and that comes with Sierra College College as well. And I have to give a huge shout out, and this builds on what we did. We acknowledged Willie's leadership here in Sierra Colleges and their faculty. We have one of the highest percentage of dual enrollments of any county in the state due to the leadership of Willie and the faculty, senate, and the others here at Sierra College. And that so tremendously benefits our kids in this community that many of them come out with a college transcript while they're in high school. And then we also think further down the line, we have a Spanish dual language immersion program. So we know that if you're bilingual, what a great trait to have. It doesn't matter what you're doing. So by having students as young as 5 years old, 4 years old enrolled in Spanish and come out at the end of sixth grade with a bilingualism and biliteracy is huge as well. And so there's all kinds of ways we can connect into that greater community, but what we really need is that engagement of what does the workforce area need, what does our community need, so we can help match that.
Well, and I think it's a constant dialogue, right? Because it just evolves. The story keeps evolving. The conversation continues to evolve, and it's innovation. And so now I'm looking at Amy because, I mean, she is well, and then we'll go to Jeff. But like Amy, because I think and I've personally told you this, I think you're so incredible in the way your mind thinks and the way you put these things together and you deliver these things. And it's really just somebody coming to you and being like, hey, we need this. And then 2 weeks later, you have a full-blown program, right? And I just think it's really reflective of the spirit, well, you as a person, but then the spirit of who we are here in Placer County. So jump in on that a little bit.
Sure, and I think building from our time in DC on the panel and what has happened since then, so yes, we've been recognized by a Department of Finance and State Board of Education, and the Chancellor's Office came on that visit, and that partnership with Roseville Joint Unified, we were able to share an automotive program and open up space. So with Adelante taking on the lab, that opened up space here where we could grow our mechatronics program. And then guess who decided to come to Roseville and needs mechatronics students? So Bosch. So it was like having those collaborations in place before the need is there, and then you're ready for it when it comes. Another example of that just recently happened is City of Roseville came to Sierra College, and there was a grant through Department of Commerce for cybersecurity workforce collaborative. And so they said, hey, can you guys apply? And we said, sure. So we put together a collaborative in just like a month, and I know Noelle Calvert's here, and she wrote the grant, so thank you. But that had Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce, which we're incorporating talent pipeline management, but our K-12 partners came on, so we have Western Placer and Roseville in on that as well. So we're going to start with building in dual enrollment for IT pathways with that. We also have Pride Industries because we needed employers on the other end, and Health Education Council. So we have several partners, but because we had these partnerships in place, when an opportunity comes up, we're ready to mobilize. So we're waiting to see if we get funded, but we can do this work whether we get funded or not. So we're going to do the dual enrollment cybersecurity pathway either way. But it would be great to have the funding to go with it.
Yeah. John, did you want to get in on that? I saw you moving in your chair.
Oh, no, it's just when they're talking about all the dual enrollment and Bosch, talking about Bosch, I mean, we received a financial investment for Bosch at Roseville High School to start the mechatronics program going there. So that's just opening one door to probably many, many more. But again, that just, in terms of that relationship and that partnership, it's creating so many opportunities for kids.
Well, and I think this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then Jeff, I want to make sure that we get to you. But right, it's because of this collaboration, but quite frankly, forums like this, or the way that we do our trip in DC, where it's just, Placer, we're limited to 100 people, and we're all in the room together, because at least for us from Placer Business Alliance, we think it's important that the tourism industry understands the needs of the retail industry, who understands the needs of the finance industry, because they are all connected by those pieces that I talked about before: the water, housing, education, all the things, right? So I think when we continue to foster these relationships and do things together that nobody's working in a silo on, I think that just makes us stronger. So Jeff, he wasn't able to join us in DC, so I'm going to have him give an update as if you weren't. So tell us all about everything, because you weren't able to join us in DC.
So I get the rest of the time?
Yeah, go. Not the rest of the time, but
Okay.
take a little
No,
time.
I'll just take a minute.
Okay.
So Jeff Tooker, Placer Union High School District. We're from Loomis, Delaware and Loomis, Placer and Auburn, Colfax High School, Forest Hill High School. And like I said, high school district like Roseville Joint. So we have, advantages and disadvantages to that with, I think we have 8 different feeder elementary districts, and we're 1,000 geographic square miles. When our schools have always held on to the comprehensiveness of their school. Back during the recession, a lot of schools cut the industrial arts, things like that, FFA. We absolutely did not. And so when we started having opportunities for pathways, for dual enrollment, we already had a great head start on that. I want to give my predecessor, Dr. George Siraki, credit. 11 years ago, he presented the idea to Willie Duncan of the dual enrollment. And Willie was an open partner to that. So we ran with it, and we figured out, okay, where are our deficits? What are our needs to build this infrastructure? A lot of that had to do with our qualified teachers. And so we created a budget where we were supporting our teachers financially who went on to get their master's degree to make them qualified to teach dual enrollment courses. We supported our CTE teachers to be qualified in CTE, dual enrollment, and pathways. Our numbers are now just absolutely through the roof of our participation in dual enrollment and completing CTE pathways. It's now part of one of our graduation requirements. Our goal is 100% of our students will graduate with dual enrollment experience and completing a CTE pathway. We have tons of students who are graduating from our high schools with already a year of college, and they'll come here and do another year of college, and then they'll transfer. Great success, and it's access. We haven't talked about educational equity yet, but now it's access, because we have so many kids who never once thought about attending college or trade school, and now all of a sudden are. And so our numbers are great in that regard. So we've just built on that. In fact, we're nearly at capacity now in what we could do as far as offering more pathways, because they're actually starting to cannibalize each other where they can't all exist. And so we've been growing that. And when it's fitting, I'll talk a little bit more of what we've done in alt ed.
Well, okay, so I do want to make sure, because we keep saying CTE pathways. We've talked about automotive, but can you give the audience some examples of what these CTE pathways are? Tell us some of the things.
Yeah, sure. We have, like we said, mentioned building trades. We have a computer science pathway that includes cybersecurity, includes programming and IT. We also have a broadcasting pathway that we've partnered with KCRA. We actually have one of their sets if you were to watch our daily program, and it's been Emmy Award winning for multiple years. We also have a child care and an education pathway. We have business. So there's a multiple sectors. And again, we look at those of some are right into the workforce immediately. Others could look at advanced degrees, because there's a whole range with any of these sectors. And so that's the challenge, is how do we evolve? We've had pathways that we've actually declined as others grew. So we used to have a huge culinary pathway, and we still have some toehold of that, but it's not as big as it was because the need isn't there in the sectors. And so for us, it's continually looking at what's that evolution and that our community needs, and also what that interest of our students, to talk about that alignment.
Okay, so it's about time that we go to questions, but is there anything else that anybody wants to add before we start taking some Q&A from the audience? You guys just jump in. Just go for it.
I'll just add, because I have some staff here today, if they could raise their hand right there in the front row. What they do is they coordinate all of this for us, and they are the movers and the shakers. And the most important thing that's evolved from all of this, from dual enrollment, kids graduating with college courses, and many of our dual enrollment courses are now direct to career. So in the previous group, they were talking about soft skills and things like that. Well, for many of our students in specific internships, they're also taking a dual enrollment course that it goes with those internships, where they do teach those skills: communication, analysis, problem solving, entrepreneurship. Those are being explicitly taught. And so again, it's now evolving to the internship phase. through the city of Roseville, various construction and trade programs throughout the county. It's just amazing. So it's now evolving from the pathway to the college credit to now they're actually in the workforce all at the same time before they cross the stage in graduation. And there's hundreds of kids doing this across our school district. So it's real important. So if you get a call from Terry or any of our team, that means they need some internship opportunities. Or if you're interested in our kids, please call them or any one of our districts, because that's what it's now moving towards. They're getting all of this done before they are crossing a stage at 18, which is really important that, again, with the theme, not only do we grow them within our own ranks, they can go do whatever training, but that they'll come back and continue their roots here in Placer County. So,
And I just want to add also that partnership can extend. Like, we are phenomenal. For 11 years, we've had a partnership with the city of Rocklin, our foundation, Rocklin Educational Excellence Foundation, that funds, we have about 15, 20 kids doing summer internships every summer, embedded in city government, whether that's the attorney's office, that's doing Parks and Rec, that's doing, roadway. And so those opportunities exist all around us, and that's a model that for us has sustained over a decade now.
So we're all talking about the same thing. So as it relates to internships, so I see Tom and Dreary from the Lincoln Chamber in the audience, and I've talked with Cherry about this as well. So one of the things that we're trying to do in Western Placer is internships are really, really important, but paid internships are even more important, because what's happening with our young people is they are having to choose between an unpaid internship in a field in which they're interested in pursuing perhaps after high school, and the need to either make money for themselves or make money to support their family. And so a lot of our students are choosing to go work at McDonald's or Taco Bell or some other place where they can get a paid job instead of participating in an internship. And we know that it's extremely difficult for small businesses especially to take on employees because of the taxes and all that goes into having an employee on the books. And so as a district, we are interested in actually having small businesses or larger businesses, doesn't matter, pay us. So donate to Western Placer Unified School District for Career Tech Ed, and we will pay, in turn, our students to be student workers for us and assign them to you for whatever projects or work that you need. So they're our employee, but they work for you in exchange for you paying us, and get a tax write-off because it's a donation to our CTE program. So if you're interested in that, please call Western Placer.
And I'll just round it out real quick. And I mentioned one of the greatest things that we've done in my district is in our continuation high school. And we had a very traditional, successful continuation high school, but it just wasn't doing what we needed it to do, getting kids ready for a career, breaking generational poverty. We actually shut that high school down and started all over again the next year. And where we created through big picture learning, where these are our most at-risk kids, our kids most at risk of who weren't making it in high school. And because school gave up on them, or they gave up on school, who all of a sudden we redesigned the school, and now they love school. Where it's built on internships, very simply, Tuesdays and Thursdays, they identify an area of interest. They go and works with our small businesses, our mom and pops in Auburn and Loomis, where they go get an internship Tuesdays and Thursdays. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they're in school, and it's highly relevant teaching and learning aligned to the area of interest. It's been the most successful thing we've done. It's called Confluence High School. And our original students, our original teachers, we asked them to name the school, and they came up with Confluence. And in Auburn, the confluence of the Middle Fork and the North Fork of the American River, it's a very symbolic, spiritual spot. And the idea with Confluence High School, this is the confluence where school meets community, community meets school. And it's been, all this other stuff has been awesome. But this has been the success story after success story of kids who now find a passion and an interest and a career right out of high school.
Well, I think that's what's so, yes. I think that's what's so wonderful and quite frankly different than when I was going through high school, right? I was going through high school in the 90s. I told these guys before we came up here, like if you wanted an internship then, you had to go out and find it yourself, right? There was no help in finding an internship. I thought I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, so I went to get a candy striping internship at my local hospital, and now I'm sitting here. So you can see how that went over for me, right? Like, I think it's really important that we're providing this to our students to give them this exposure to all of these things and changing so many of their futures. It's really wonderful. Amy, I'm just gonna look at you. Is there anything you wanna say on this piece before we go to Q&A?
I think we touched a little bit about the K-12 strong workforce funding, and the way that is structured, it's really meant to align with our community college partner, and so we're thrilled that our high school partners have done that, and we actually have gotten even more proactive about it. So we're doing more proactive planning, really trying to align with the most priority sectors like in engineering and manufacturing, IT and cybersecurity, construction, so that funding can come to the high schools when they need it the most. I know we're looking at funding cuts, so it's like even more important to be aligned and to be set. So those conversations are happening. The grants are due, the proposals are due in the fall, but because of our partnerships and the success with dual enrollment and our pathways already in place, we're able to really streamline those and accelerate our opportunities for funding.
I think that's innovative and remarkable. Okay, so with that, looking at everybody, Josh and Jerry. Okay, there we go. Bright Lights, Big City. Are there any questions?
So it's Scott Olson, a familiar face if you were here earlier today. It's a question to the whole panel, but it's actually more of a challenge to the whole panel. So I know that I should say who I am. Scott Olson, sorry, Bosch Semiconductors. You told me to say that and then I didn't do it. So I work with a couple of you up there on the panel in these efforts to bridge this gap, which is such a critical piece. It's a question and a challenge. How can we make some synergy out of those 5 chairs up there? How can we have that little coffee table be the central point that sort of is a place for employers to go and be able to leverage the talents from each of you and the schools that you represent in your programs? So that's my either question or challenge. I'm not sure, or both.
I think that it starts with having a regional approach, which like this, I appreciate Willie hosting this, because for you to have to go and meet with all of us separately makes no sense. And so I think it's finding ways where we come together around the table and talk about how things work together, whether that we use forums like this through the Sierra College, whether it be through our economic development space within the county. So I think we need to make it easy for that to occur, because we all have similar missions. We just happen to do them in different communities. And so that's where, to me, that makes a lot of sense, because it's the same for us to have to go duplicate and say, oh, who'd you talk to at Bosch? Oh, who'd you talk to over here? And so I think that's where, if we set up that intentional conversation, then I think we can go even further down the road than we have to come and hear bits and pieces, and then you also say, well, I know I'm hearing from part of the county, but what about the rest?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say the opportunities through Placer Business Alliance programs Willie and his staff put together, and then our local chambers. And when we get invited, we're there. We want to have a seat at the table just like you guys do, and that's where all the conversations and the magic really happens, and that's what creates access and opportunity for our students, is through those conversations.
I think we need industry to drive it too, because we have our career tech advisory committees that meet, and it's really hard sometimes to get industry in the room. But we're willing. We get along really well, and we're happy to meet on a regular basis. We need people to be in the room with us, and so if industry is driving it, we will be there.
And one thing that we're doing already is we meet quarterly with our CTE high school teachers and community college faculty. They're called professional learning communities, and often we invite industry partners into those conversations. So you could essentially meet with all the high school teachers teaching in that pathway and the community college faculty at one time. And if you want more information about that, I'm happy to share it afterwards. So.
Hi, everyone. What a great day and what great conversations. Thank you for being here. I'm Monique Brown. I am co-founder of the Growth Factory, entrepreneur in residence here at Sierra College, and collaborator with the City of Roseville and Roseville Joint Unified High School District on a program for high school students in building kind of innovative companies. So two-part question, I'll make it quick. But in the two cohorts that we've run with our students, they're challenged with identifying a problem we're solving and then building a solution or a company proposal to build the solution. In both cohorts, our kids, mostly 11th and 12th graders from across high schools, have identified exposure to careers that earlier in life. They're facing college applications, many of them. They're looking at, $500,000 expenses on those four-year degrees and more. And they're like, I don't know what I want to do. My mom's a this, my dad's a that. That's all I know about, right? And so I think the first question is, and I think it's been talked about, but how might we get kids access and exposure to more careers earlier in their education? And it ties into the second part of that question is, how are you thinking about involving parents and families? Because they are the ones that are shepherding these kids K through at least, 6th, 7th, 8th, and then, into high school. But how are families being involved in that discussion or re-educated about pathways and possibilities for their students? Thank you.
We found that this year we have a parent university program, and one of the spaces we created was a spot for parents to come and find out what does it take to get my child ready for college, career, and a conversation. We didn't have high school parents there. We had a ton of our upper elementary, middle school parents who were craving that. What does it take? What do I need to do as a parent? What does my child need to be thinking about? And so part of that is opening up that space for that conversation at earlier and younger ages. And also it's about assuring parents that students will try things and not like them. Knowing what you don't like is just as important as knowing what you do like before you get into that sixth change of major or career in your 22. And so that's where we think that conversation needs to be there. And we also, frankly, think it helps with student mental health and anxiety, because we could all be that parent that's like, well, what do you mean you're not ready for Harvard yet or Stanford? And so by helping them realize, here's the progression, here's what you can do as a parent, here's what we can do with you, and making those options available. So it's really creating that dialogue space in elementary and at middle school.
Parent communication's always been a challenge. We have the best intentions, and it's hard to find an audience sometimes. Something new that we've done this year is we started a podcast, and starring me, and comes out twice a month, where we showcase different pathways, dual enrollment, teachers, students, and these kind of conversations. We're getting thousands of listens every episode, and so that's been effective. So I think it's understanding your audience and figuring out other ways to deliver information, and then have that conversation at a local level with each school. My staffs, my principals, assistant principals, they're so extremely talented and articulate in having these conversations. And our counselors, if there's any school counselors in the room, shout out to you, because all this work that we've talked about, a lot of that has been on your shoulders, and it's been very successful.
Yeah, so I think we have time for 2 more questions. Okay, Jerry.
Oh,
Okay. Hi, my name is Martin Ross. I am with the Health Education Council. I'm a Deputy Director for External Affairs and Partnerships and Workforce Development. And the lady's question earlier triggered one of the questions, or kind of one of the questions that I wanted to ask. And it has to do with when we talk about the idea of opportunity youth, if you heard of that one, 16 to 24-year-olds, of course, that's in your range at the high school level. But I want to ask the question about disconnected adults. So my theory from some of the work that I've done working with hard-to-reach communities and so forth has to do with if I can reach the kids, and I can get to the parents. But if I can get to the parents, I can get to the whole household. So a lot of times the issues that we're talking about with unemployment, lack of employment, or underemployment, it's a household issue. Kids are contributing 30% sometimes of the income, especially in the low-income homes. So I wanted to ask a question, is there any thought between you all here and maybe the industry here to say, hey, if we reach the parents, the kids in some of these activities for internships and others, what about if we can start working with the parents? Because if the parents can be improved, the whole neighborhood can be improved. So we've got a conference September 13th on this workforce development too, if you want to come to that. Health Education Council. Thanks.
Do you want a response?
Does anybody want to address that?
That's the other challenge. And by default, most of our staff are becoming parents. And we have the mantra, who's representing these kids if they don't have representation at home? And that's us. It's shifted paradigms and practices and beliefs like crazy. And the more that we can do, there's only so much we could do as far as impacting parents. Often we find that a lot of these disconnected parents had a horrible experience in high school and want nothing to do with us. And so we invest everything we can into their kids. So hopefully they don't have that experience. But you're absolutely right. We want to have the parent partnership, and in some regards it's not going to happen. And so who can help us pick up the slack on that?
One of the other things that we do try to do is really help be a bridge and connector to a lot of the services here. Our county does a phenomenal job with safety nets. So whether it's our newcomer English learners and families needing, how do I learn English? How do I navigate the system to sign up for a sports team or sign up for something in the community? And also our foster youth and homeless youth, which we don't have huge numbers in this county, our communities, but we have them. And so making sure that we work directly to connect students and their caregivers into those services as well, because often as a parent, we want the best for our kids and we want to support them. So a lot of what we do is serve as that connector role, because often we can be that most accessible point of contact. You take your child to school. Well, when we can interact with parents directly, we can build that relationship and then connect them to those services, because we are often the first place that they interact with a community. So that's one of our biggest roles, is just to try to connect in versus create all those different services that unfortunately we just don't have the capacity to do.
When you did mention foster youth, I know that we have that. I know it's a big program that Sierra College has that the foundation supports. So, there's that in our community, and I think everybody working together. Josh, is there another question? Yes. Okay, Jerry. This will be the last one.
Hi, Susan Wheeler, recently retired from SMUD, and I'm adjunct faculty at American River College in entrepreneurship. I heard throughout the day the importance of internships, and I fully support that. I think those are really key. However, I think we also heard from, is it Carrie, that 15 to 20 students, that's just a drop in the bucket in terms of the number of students who can actually get internships. So I'm going to kind of take a cue from Chris, which is a challenge. How do we get more students exposure to real life work experience in the school system? And I'll use an example. I was also adjunct at Sierra College, and I went to the chamber to ask for anyone who had a marketing challenge, and brought that into my students for them to work in teams to put together a solution. to solve a real life problem, and the employer would come in and listen to the pitches. So the students worked on real life, work-based learning opportunities. And so would that be something, this is the challenge, would you be willing to implement those types of things in your schools so that every student had an opportunity to get real life exposure to a work situation? Kind of
Absolutely.
unpaid, but an internship somewhat.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where we can create so many of those, say, in our school districts, because we actually operate very complex, large businesses, and so we do work to do that. But if we welcome that community customer engagement, client engagement, that's very powerful, because our graphic arts pathway has done that for some local businesses and other areas where they've had to make the pitch, listen to the need, make the pitch, adjust to feedback. And that's a lot different than just adjusting to your teacher's feedback.
I would say there's a voice missing at this synergy table to help us support these great ideas, and that's Sacramento. The legislative voice. We do what we can within what's legislated, and it's still a very traditional system that's not aligned to the actual needs of our communities and industry. And so that needs to be part of the conversation too, because there's things that are well-intended that come out of Sacramento, another great idea, but we can't do all the great ideas. So here's the next great idea. What old great idea can we remove so that we could do things like this? You could all clap for that one.
Agreement. Any other thoughts on this, or any final words as we start to close this out?
Keep inviting us to engage. Often when you think about workforce development business, you think, rightly so, of Sierra College, Sac State, UC Davis, William Jessup, but those kids come from somewhere. Mm-hmm. And they're with us for 13, 14 years before they get there. And so we really need to be a part of that conversation so that we can help fast launch what they do in higher ed and in workforce. Because we're also a key factor for why people want to bring their businesses is they want their own children to have a high quality experience as well. So please keep us at that table and invite us in directly.
Well, and I think as we grow and our communities grow, right, and Carrie and I talk a lot about this, like the number one thing that why people buy where they buy and why they want to be where they be and why we want Placer to remain a place that people want to be is because of the schools, right? They choose to buy a home because of the schools, and that's such an important piece. That's why I think for me and Placer Business Alliance back in October 22, when this Willie first talked about this idea, it was so interesting to us because I think for a long, long time it was you go to a traditional university and that's what you do. And if you don't do that, then you go to community college because you didn't get good grades or you couldn't afford it or whatever. And that's not the case anymore. And I think as we continue to have these dialogues to change that narrative, that really helps everybody, including the students, for sure.
I've presented state conferences and national conferences, and every single one, and we compete in sports, but we all want to win. We want all of our kids to win. I want Carrie's kids to win. Roger wants mine, etc. And I always say we've got a great thing going in Placer County. You could send kids to any one of our schools and have a quality, highly good education. And each school has something unique that they could hang their hat on. But ultimately, the quality of life in Placer County is so good. So the more that we could do things like this, it's going to get even better.
That's great. That's great sentiment. Anybody else want to close? Say anything? No? Amy? Yeah.
I think, just back to workforce and yes, I absolutely employers keep us engaged. Also for as educators to be really on the pulse of what's coming. So that we're able to develop our curriculum and our pathways to meet the needs in the region. So I think we're doing a good job of that now, but we know things are changing so quickly. So as you are seeing things change in your industry or sector, keep us abreast of that so that we're able to pivot if needed.
Okay. All right, well, thank you all for joining us, and thank you for joining us in DC. Our DC trip this year will be November 12th through the 15th, and we actually only have 10 more spots available because we cap it at 100. So if you are interested in going, please visit our website. But thank you so much for both the time today and the time back in DC, and I look forward to continuing this conversation with you all. Okay.
Excellent. Well, join me in thanking our panelists one last time. Thank you. Sherry said it there at the end. Gail said it when she was on stage. You know, the value, one of the values in Placer County is our education system. And we have fantastic leaders in our education system, and you got to see some of that today. And it definitely makes my job easier when I have great partners like that. And, you know, we push each other. You know, the idea came out of Placer to really grow dual enrollment and create a dual enrollment program. And we jumped on that, and then we pushed them and some of our other schools to grow their programs. And so we all work really, really well together. And in a little bit, we're going to hear now from our last keynote speaker, but in a little bit, we're going to talk about some action points. And we did not script these conversations today, but they are leading right to where we need to get. So I think we're all really, really well aligned. So for our last keynote, for those of you that have stayed today, you're going to really be pleased that you did. Our afternoon keynote speaker is here to talk about the realities of the new world of work, how technology and the rise of AI are changing jobs, and the fight for talent, and ways effective communities are responding. Todd Trotter is the Senior Vice President, Northern California Human Resources for Kaiser Permanente. Todd joined Kaiser Permanente in 2002 and has held multiple leadership roles within operations and human resources. In his current role, Todd is responsible for core HR services such as employee relations, learning and development, and workforce planning locally and regionally. Todd also has shared accountability for labor relations, compensation, and talent acquisition. Todd is leading Kaiser Permanente's efforts to create more employment opportunities for veterans, as well as ensuring the needs of members and patients who are veterans and their needs are met. Todd is a decorated veteran himself, having served 8 years in the United States Army. Please welcome Todd Trotter. Mr. Trotter.
Right. First of all, thank you for having me, President Duncan, as well as I want to thank Kim Manziel, who volunteered me for this. So thank you, Kim. I appreciate it. And by the way, I don't live in Placer County. I live in Sacramento, so how I'm going to start pains me to say this, but Placer County is one of the most desirable places to live in the country. All right? So as a Sacramento person, I acknowledge that. But more importantly, it's growing, right? It continues to grow. And for Kaiser Permanente, we're trying to figure out how do we meet that need for growth, right? How do we get there? There's workforce issues that we're trying to get towards because we've got to hire folks to serve the needs of the community, our patients and our members. And there's also how do we develop that talent? So a couple things that we're doing right now within Kaiser, and I'm not making this a Kaiser speech, but I want to share these things, is one is, if you haven't seen, there's expansion going on at Kaiser Roseville. Anybody not seen that? That's happening. There's a comprehensive care center that's being developed and generated for there. That's going to happen. And we think that doing those things will allow us to better serve the community. But more importantly, if we're going to do that and there's going to be that growth, how do we develop that workforce to get there, right? How do we get to a point where we've got the right people to do the jobs to serve our patients and members, the community? So one way you can get there, and this is one of the things I was asked to talk about, was partnerships. How do you get those partnerships going, right? Which we think are important, and Kaiser has a long history of building and working partnerships. So last year, 3 healthcare systems, Roseville Chamber of Commerce, got together and looked at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Talent Pipeline Management Program. In that program, they were looking and saying, okay, what are the needs? upcoming needs, what are the things we have to do, how are we going to serve the community from a healthcare perspective. And that led to a conversation with Sierra College. And that conversation with Sierra College identified a need, and that need was for surgical techs that the healthcare community is going to need in the future. So what happens next is a beautiful thing about collaboration and partnership. Next year in spring, guess what comes here for its first cohort at Sierra College? Anybody want to take a guess? Surge techs, right? It's beautiful, right? When people partner and come together. It's those types of partnerships that we really enjoy at Kaiser. We're very community focused and working with folks and working with different organizations. I heard some comments up here earlier from people about these partnerships, internships, other things. Those work, and we're proud of that. The most important thing about those things is they provide opportunities to people who normally wouldn't get those opportunities. When you talk about someone who's homeless, when you talk about someone who's been incarcerated, when you talk about someone who feels like they're stuck in a low-paying job, anybody ever feel that way? I did. I was a dishwasher. For those who, I'm dating myself now, I felt that way when I was a dishwasher at Mr. Steak when I was a teenager. Anybody remember Mr. Steak? I used to wash dishes there. So you know, those partnerships are really good. And so I want to make sure that you understand it. It's those partnerships that we're doing with Roseville and Sierra College that are going to help us meet the community needs and meet the healthcare needs. Now I'm going to share some things with you that I think are good to share. First is, last year at Kaiser, we went through some contract negotiations with our union. And it was a very challenging contract negotiation, but in the end, we landed on an agreement with them. And the agreement was, and I want you guys to digest this, the agreement was that we would we would hire 10,000 jobs in 3 years. 10,000 jobs in 3 years, right? What does that tell you? There's a lot of work to be done. The good news is we did that in less than a year, right? 10,000 hires in less than a year. The other good news is we know that there's a lot of work that has to go into that, creating jobs, creating those opportunities. So one of the things I did before I came here, I started looking at Sierra College, and I was like, well, what do they offer, right? What are the things that they offer? So I looked at some of the obvious, right? Nursing, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay, psychology, does that make sense? Psychiatry, does that make sense? Okay, what about business management? Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. EMS, EMT, does that make sense? Yeah, right? IT, communications. Those are all roles that we have at Kaiser that we use. In fact, in preparation for today, it was my comms people who said, here, these are some things we want you to cover. So I'm in my head clicking off my things I was told to cover, but I'm also saying what I want to say, right? But I say that to say, and there's one more, administration of justice. Does that work at Kaiser Permanente? Well, let me share a story with you. I'm gonna, you know, President Duncan, thank you for reading my bio, but I'm going to reverse engineer that for you guys and take you back to why I think this is an important conversation, at least for me to be here, and I'm happy to be here. So I've been at Kaiser for a while, and as you heard, I'm the Senior Vice President of Human Resources. Before that, I practiced law. I was a labor and employment attorney, saving the world, right? It's still here, so I must have done something right. I'm just joking. But before that, I was in law school. And in law school, you heard a conversation just now about internships. It was there that I got opportunities to learn, grow my network, and get opportunities, get internships in law clerk. Before that, I was at Sac State, and I graduated from Sac State, and I graduated debt-free, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, how that happened. And then before that, guess where I was? I was at community college. I did my first 2 years of college at community college. And I did that because when I was graduating high school, I remember right before I graduated, I was looking to apply to schools, and my mom was a single mom. We didn't have a lot of money, and she was raising 4 kids as a single mom. And I said, hey, Mom, I'm going to college. I'm going to go to college. And she said, that's great. And I said, okay. And I said, any advice for me? And she said, no, just one thing. And I said, what's that? She goes, you can go to the best college that you can afford. All right? So what does that tell me as a 17-year-old graduating high school? I don't have any money. And I just happened to be sitting around and saw a pamphlet for the Army, and it said it would pay for my college, and so that was my plan. I would go to college. So I got out, did the math. I said, if I go to college for 4 years, I won't have enough left in my college fund, so I'll do 2 years in the community college. One of the best experiences I ever had. It was flexible, gave me what I needed to do, and more importantly, it put me on a transfer agreement. Anybody familiar with the transfer agreement? Those are still around 20 some odd years later. I'm a recipient of the transfer agreement. So it got me there. And so that journey does include some of this. And so I always believe that this is an important avenue and a resource. I also want to talk a little bit, I was asked to talk about a couple things. One was the partnerships. The other one is around AI. So I heard conversations around AI, and I heard a lot being said around that. Here's the thing for us in AI at Kaiser. We deal with humans, right? And we deal with patients. And it's our providers and our care teams that determine how the care is given to patients. This is Todd's opinion. I don't envision a day when I walk into Kaiser and I see nothing but robots in there caring for people. Don't see that. What we can do with AI, though, is figure out how do you use it, and how do you use it in a way that works well for our patient care plans, right? How do we use it in a way that it makes sense to get us to the right plan of care for patients? And so that's what we'll do. We don't build widgets, right? We're not in manufacturing, so it's not just push a button and it provides that care. It really is about making sure that we use it in a way that benefits our patients and our members in our community. And so we're not opposed to AI, but we also, not just at Kaiser, but everywhere, you have to figure out the best way to use it. Does that make sense? And I tell people, if you really want just AI, go in a dark room, push a button, and everything will run itself, and that's what you do. But that's not what we do. We deal with humans. The other thing I want to share is part of this whole journey with AI and with the partnerships and with the creating the jobs is I've kind of seen it all come together. I can go story after story after story of people who are at our organization who I've seen come in, entry-level jobs, low pay, not low paying, but low skill jobs that don't require all these technical and certification skills. And I watch them partner with other organizations to get there. There's a gentleman who works at one of our medical centers now. His name's Clifford. And Clifford started out cleaning our hospitals. And he did a great job. And he always had a great energy about him. And he just stopped me one day and he said, "Hey, I have more to offer the organization. What can I do?" And we talked through some things, looked at opportunities, connected him up with some folks, and Clifford went out and got some certifications, got some trainings, went back to school. And Clifford now is one of the engineers in one of our hospitals. He works to keep our hospital running safely. He works to make sure that there's no problems with the equipment. I mean, and I can go through and give you example after example after example after example of the Cliffords of our world that we have. And it's not without the opportunities that you heard discussed here and here that those opportunities with Clifford happen, those Cliffords of the world. So I come here to say, you know, and I'm gonna close with this, but I just want to share that we support the partnerships. We think they're valuable. We think any organizations that aren't working with those partnerships are missing out on some great opportunities. We've got a lot of hiring to do in a short amount of time because we're growing and we want to meet the needs of the community, and we want to get there. And we are committed to those partnerships. And I heard a lot of great ideas today that I didn't have before I walked in here about how to partnership. I've been trying to figure out how to connect the high schools to us. I've got some names now. I've been trying to figure out how to get some of these programs to where they can meet our needs and get people in. I heard some ideas about that today. So I think there's great opportunity here. I've gotten more out of being here than probably most of you have gotten today because I have some things now that I can take with me and take back. And we're going to grow that workforce. We're going to develop that workforce, and we're going to continue to invest in Placer County as well as everywhere else. So thank you for being here. And more importantly, I just want to tell everybody thank you for sharing. It's greatly appreciated, and I've learned a lot today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Todd. So you're going to have an opportunity to ask questions of Todd. We're going to go over to, you guessed it, the Wolverine Den. And so we're hoping that you'll have some questions. Todd, let me ask this question of you. So Kaiser is a big organization. You're in 8 states?
8 states. We're in 8 states, but just to give you a sense of how big we are, we've got over 200,000 employees, right, nationwide. We're in 8 states, as you described. Just in Northern California, we've got 81,000 plus employees, 10,000 plus physicians, over 200 medical offices, and over 20 hospitals. I mean, do the math there. That's a lot. I tell people we're the second largest employer in the state of California behind who?
State of California.
Can't beat them.
So what's behind that question is that you have the experience of working in lots of different communities. And when you and I were speaking before this, we were having a conversation about, well, what makes for a successful community that works with employers? What are those ingredients? And I wonder if you can share some of the things that might come to mind that you find in high-performing communities that are able to sort of address workforce challenges, people, talent issues for companies like KP?
Yeah, it's actually a great question because Kaiser's been successful, but it's not successful because of Kaiser. It's successful because of the community, the people in the community, the relationships in the community, and the partnerships in the community. We have a real sense of purpose in terms of investing in the community and having those partnerships. A lot of people who work at Kaiser have family who get care at Kaiser, right? Because if you're a Kaiser employee, guess where you get your care? At Kaiser, right? Your neighbor, guess where they get their care, many of them? At Kaiser. It's a sense of community, it's a sense of pride, it's a sense of wanting to be a part of something and do your best you can do it. We try to hire for folks who we believe fit what we're looking for, people who care about patients and genuinely care. I'll share with you that something I share at when I used to be at the medical center and I used to do new employee orientation. I used to tell people, you can come to Kaiser and a lot of people want to, right? And you come, and if you're here for the money, because we do pay, we think, fairly at Kaiser, but if you come for that and you don't come for the patient care experience, which really is what makes the community work with us and it makes it all come together, you won't last long. You can't be a nurse that's in it for the money. Because as we all know, if you're sitting on a hospital bed and you're there at the hospital, first of all, most people don't wake up in the morning and go, today for fun, I'm going to go get admitted to the hospital, right? They don't do that. So when people come to see us, they're scared, they're nervous, they don't want to be there, right? And it's our job to pull them in, to treat them as family, to make sure they get the best care experience possible. And for those new employees, if you're there for the wrong reasons, our patients and members can feel that. They know that. You can't hide it. And so you won't last long. And so it's that connection with the community, the investment in the community to get into programs like we talked about with the talent pipeline management program, to leverage that, to create jobs in the community where people can have high-paying, high-quality jobs. All that comes together, and we're all in this together. We view ourselves as part of the community, and we view ourselves as working with the community to make it happen.
That's great. Do we have any questions?
Thank you so much, Todd, for sharing your story, but also for bringing TPM. I do have a question. So we've been working with the healthcare providers for over a year now, and we're building the talent pipeline for 5 different technicians, including surgical tech. But one of the challenges we're facing is as these programs are being built to increase capacity, we're facing the challenges of clinical placements for students. So how can we work together to increase clinical placements?
Yeah. That's a tough one in some ways, but not. The clinical placements are a challenge because everybody wants clinical placements, right? They're out there. We're in the process of working with different organizations to find how we can do that. Can we meet every one of those demands? I'm not going to tell you we can, but we're looking to find partnerships and find ways to provide those clinical placements. Part of our recent contract negotiations, we leveraged out and ironed out some of those that we're looking to do. And we'll continue to look for opportunities to do that. Some of the schools offer them, as you know, some don't. And one of the challenges, what she's getting at, just so everybody here understands, we're going to speak a common language here, is it's sort of that which comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? We want you to get the job, but you have to have the experience. But how do you get the experience if you don't have the job? Am I right? That's what you're getting at. We're trying to find ways to do that works with us and works with the community. We've been successful more than not, and we'll continue to look for those ways. And like I said, in our most recent bargaining, we did find opportunities to do that, and we'll continue to leverage that. If you have ideas, reach out to us. We're always open to listening.
Fantastic, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, let me ask you this last question. So it goes back to community. So outside of Placer, which we know is your favorite and the best, are there other communities that you would encourage us to look at? You know, there's this theme of continual improvement. We want to push ourselves, challenge ourselves. Are there communities where KP has facilities that you think we should be looking in on and maybe grabbing some inspiration from?
There's a couple. We do really good in terms of learning and developing and grabbing from the Bay Area. We could do better in the South Bay Area. We've had some challenges there. In fact, that's one of the conversations I had last night with someone was around how do we grow some of the talent out of the South Bay. The challenge is that everybody's moving here, right? No, I'm being honest. Everybody's moving here. They're leaving there and coming here. So there's talent here. There's workforce here. There's opportunity to grow and develop. So now we have a new challenge. I know this doesn't completely answer your question, but it's created a challenge of you guys are really the answer. Because the housing, the affordability, the desire to be here, the growth, right? And people are saying, well, I can have a better quality of life in Placer County maybe than I can in South Bay. So we're seeing where we used to have an abundance of folks there, we're now being challenged there. So we have to come up with some creative ideas and partnerships like TPM here to say, what can we do there? But you guys really are setting the bar. You guys really are driving the example. And someone said to me yesterday, as we were having this conversation, I was like, what can we do? You know, can we open up another school in Sacramento or do this or do that? And they said, why? You guys don't have a hiring problem up there. You've got more than enough people up there. We're struggling somewhere else. So we're looking to emulate a lot of what we're doing here. Placer County is a great place to be. It's a great place to create opportunities. It's a great place for us to grow. And it's happening. So the real answer is I could tell you about the Bay Area and they do good, but it's really happening here.
All right, you heard it here. So, Todd, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Okay. Well, that was a fantastic conversation. Thank you to Todd for being with us today. And overall, this has been a great conversation today. So if you've looked at your agenda, you know we're coming towards the end, and I'm going to get us out on time. Before I get to our last little piece, I did want to say thank you to all of our partners, our business partners who are listed on the front here. And they are Placer Business Alliance, Rocklin Area Chamber of Commerce, Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce, Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, Valley Vision, Greater Sacramento, the County of Placer, North State BIA, Building Industry Association, all fantastic partners. And in particular, want to recognize the Sierra Workforce Summit partners who underwrote these activities today: Golden Sierra, First Northern Bank, the County of Placer, Pioneer Community Energy, Sierra College, and the Sierra College Foundation. So thank you to those partners for making this all possible here today and all the hard work that went into this. So I messed with my people up there a little bit. I went out of order with what I was going to do, but they went right with me, so I appreciate that. I would now like to just say that a conversation like we've had today, a series of conversations, we've tried to provide kind of a holistic look at workforce in our area, from an employer perspective, K-12 perspective, community college perspective, organizations that work around workforce and economic development. But talk is talk, right? And so now what do we do about it? And that kind of brings us to our next step, which is what is our call to action? And some people like to call this a BHAG. Have you all heard that term? A big, hairy, audacious goal. So we have a BHAG for you today. Actually, it's something that I think you'll see as really a vision, a pathway of our own, and something that we can take from this and begin to work on. So I hope you'll join me as we work on this in our ecosystem and kind of develop these ideas out. So you might or might not be able to read all of that up there. I'm going to talk about each one of these items and kind of relate them to our conversation today. So, but they're pretty simple. They're going to stick right out to you. And this is really a vision of where we think we can go. Placer learners of all ages are connected to promising careers and can work or intern in their field of interest while in school. That conversation was a thread through every single panel and speaker we saw today. And so, I said earlier that we didn't script what everybody was going to say, but it's leading us right to these action points that we've developed. And so I think that first one is extremely important. We want to be able to connect into our high schools with business and industry and provide work-based learning opportunities for high school students as they're trying to figure out what it is that they want to do. Junior, senior year are too late. We need to be hitting them as freshmen and sophomores with those ideas of career. The work can happen as they hit their junior and senior year, but they really need to be thinking about it. Number two, more than 50 area employers are actively engaged with local schools and businesses serving organizations to anticipate and fill future workforce needs. This could be 100, this could be 150. We picked 50 because we thought that was a good, solid number for a community like ours here. And we want to engage businesses. We want businesses at the table. So when we've completed this action item, we want to be able to say that at least 50 or more than 50 employers have been engaged and are partnered with us on trying to meet some of these goals and trying to anticipate future workforce and help us train and be a part of that ecosystem that's going to lead people into jobs. And then number three, all public and private education providers and community-based organizations in Placer County support career exploration and have created clear educational pathways for all students to access high-demand jobs. This one is really based upon wanting to have the whole ecosystem, every partner aligned together, whether an educator or a economic development entity, or whether you've got you're a public entity that's got some sort of work-based learning opportunity, that you're participating in the development of those pathways, and that all of those pathways are leading into high-demand, high-wage jobs. So really aligning that whole system of workforce training all together so that we're all pushing in the same direction, all moving the same direction, really maximizing those assets. And then number four, educators, employers, civic organizations have helped more than 2,000 working age adults increase their skills to advance in their current job or transition to a new career. So in thinking about that, we wanted to make sure we weren't just talking about students in high school or students in college, but we're also talking about working age adults. There are many working age adults that are either in jobs that they would like to move on from. Maybe they don't make enough in those. They would like to get some advanced skills, some higher level skills. They feel like it might be a dead end job. It might be in a sector that where jobs are declining. As technology shifts and moves into other areas. And so we don't want to forget those groups of individuals. We want to re-engage them into the educational ecosystem and provide them the opportunity to upskill and be able to move into some of these high-tech jobs and some of these higher wage jobs that are coming out into the future. So really trying to think about everybody who's engaged in our community. And then that last part there is kind of a vision statement or an aspirational statement. Business, education, government, tribes, and community groups function as one team, leveraging information, learnings, and approaches for preparing students for good-paying jobs, making Placer County the leading place in California for lifelong learning and career-long success. So if we can accomplish this, I mean, these are a lot. There's a lot here, but if we can accomplish this, I think we'll come back sometime in the future and we'll look back at this time period as really a tipping point for us when we really took ourselves, our economy, our workforce to a whole nother level. So are you in on this and helping us get this done? I'm glad you applauded, because we couldn't do it without you. So we'll be looking for more opportunities to connect with you as we go. This is our first summit of this type. We plan to do more, but also there are a lot of opportunities to connect in. Cherry mentioned Placer Business Alliance, and they've been doing work in this area, as has Placer County Economic Development Corporation, the Roseville and Rocklin and Lincoln Chambers. And so looking to leverage all of these pieces that we have in the different times of year when we meet to try to make sure this workforce conversation stays a part of this in a permanent way. we want you to stay connected with us. We want you to visit our website, which I think is going to pop up on the screen here in just a second. And we also would like you to contact our workforce team at workforce@sierracollege.edu. And then we'd love feedback for today's summit. We have a QR code that you can scan. Please tell us what you liked, didn't like, what worked, what didn't work. Tell us how you want to engage. Are there ways you'd like to engage? Do you have a company or a business or an or an organization that would like to connect with us? We are here. We're open for business. We want to be part of the community. And we really thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I know it was a long day, long time to be sitting in those seats, but hopefully you got something out of this, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.